Platinum, Gold, and Titanium. Welcome back to Sound the Siren. I'm Xavier.
I'm Dylan. Welcome back to another episode. And today it is the week that was. It's the round five review. And I think there were seven teams that stood up, but two with epic fails. And we should jump into it. But is there anything else you want to mention, Dave?
No, nothing yet.
All right, maybe at the end of the episode. But the first game that I don't really want to discuss, but we will. We were actually there. It was St Kilda versus Richmond, and Saints fought hard in the first quarter, but then Richmond just completely overran them.
Yeah, I think throughout the whole game, I don't really think St Kilda stood up at all. I think to lose by 86 points when you're competing for a spot in the eight isn't really the best, and it's going to damage their percentage as well. So they're going to need to win a couple or win at least one extra game than whoever finishes in ninth, I think, given that they've lost by so much. But I think they were really poor all game, except for other than the first quarter. I think they really got beaten in like every category. So it was a little bit disheartening, I'd say, if I was a St Kilda fan, and it's a good bounce back for Richmond, given that they're coming off back-to-back losses.
Yeah, doubt the Tigers at your own peril. They were absolutely brilliant. Dusty, 34 touches. Jack Revolt stole the show with 5 goals, and Jack Graham managed to chip in 3, as well as another impressive performance by him. Severely underrated. So the Tigers, they'll bounce back. They've got a tough matchup this week, which we'll get to later on in the episode, but still very winnable.
There was actually one thing I wanted to say before we moved on to the next topic, and that is that I'm an AFL genius. I did manage to tip 9 out of 9 this week. Got all of them correct.
9?
Yeah. I'm going to post that on the STS Instagram for anyone that wants proof, but good effort from me. I also predicted Darcy Moore playing forward and Luke Parks getting dropped, so ripping start.
Very, very impressive by you, Zave, I will admit. And the second game was the Eagles and the Pies, and the Pies weren't as bad as people initially thought they would be, but they've been under the scope after Jordan De Goey and Jeremy Howe were seen using their phone. Did you manage to see that by any chance?
Yeah, I did hear that De Goey was using it, and we know there's been controversy about like his or in past controversy about him gambling on his own game, or Jaden Stevenson, sorry, gambling on his own games. And I was listening to John Ralph, who was talking about how that's exactly the type of information bettors would like to know, like whether players are injured or not. I'm sure there wasn't any malicious intent from any of them, but it's probably not the best look.
Yeah, not the best look, but the Eagles were impressive. Jack Darling, Dom Sheed, Josh Kennedy, Oscar Allen, all amazing for them. Oscar Allen and Darling managed to kick 5 goals each. Jeremy McGovern was back to his best in the defensive side of things, and Andrew Gaff, Redden, Duggan were great in the absence of Luke Shuey and Elliot Yeo.
As well as Shannon Hearn, who was also injured. Petrocelli missed this game.
Yeah.
And there are more as well that I'm missing, but I think
Liam
they had
Ryan.
like 6 or 7. Yeah, Liam Ryan as well. He's out for, I think, 4 weeks with
Mm.
a hot spot in his leg. So they're missing some very good players, and they won still, so they'll be very dangerous once all of them get back.
Yeah. And it all went pear-shaped for the Pies when De Goey and Howe did go down, and this is where the trade, I think the off-season will hurt them now that their players are getting injured. They've removed all their backup players. You see Basena Vilagi played well for North Melbourne on the weekend, and he was handy for the Pies last year, but they did offload him. But for the Pies, Darcy Cameron was okay, and Mason Cox was dropped. Do you think he'll enter the side next week?
I'm not sure that if you're going to play, although I think Myercheck may have got injured as well. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so if he doesn't play, then maybe Cox is a chance. But I don't think he can play Myercheck, Cameron, and Cox all in the same forward line, given that they're not exactly the most mobile lot of the three. And then you've got Grundy as well. So I don't think all 3 of them can play, but maybe there's a small chance the 2 of them can.
Positive signs from Finley McRae as well. Next game was, well, there was actually the AFLW Grand Final and a big win from the Brisbane Lions. I'm not sure if you managed to catch any of it. I actually did watch it, and it was a great atmosphere. Adelaide Oval was up and about. Unfortunately, their team didn't win, but Yeah, a great atmosphere and good to see the Lions getting up and preventing the Crows from going back to back to back, I believe. And then on to the Bulldogs Gold Coast game, and I think the Bulldogs almost wrapped up an A plus if it wasn't for their third quarter.
Yeah, they were destroying Gold Coast. I believe they only had like 4 points, or it was 9 points at halftime. So that's
Yeah.
not the start that Gold Coast would have liked to get out to. But
Yeah.
the Bulldogs are in control of the game from the very start to the very end. I think their midfielders again stood up. Dunkley, Bontempelli, and McRae were probably the three best on ground. I think Bontempelli, my man, stood up again. 10 contested possessions, 33 disposals, and he kicked 3 goals as well. So very good from him, and I think he'll continue his Brownlow case.
I'll just correct myself. It was back to back, and then they won the year before. So it was 3 out of 4 years for the Crows in the AFLW. But as you said, the Bulldogs were unstoppable in the first half. Josh Dunkley, Bontempelli, McRae, Treloar. It's just ridiculous, their midfield. Even Lockie Hunter chipped in, and they were absolutely exceptional. But for the Suns, any severe problems that you can spot?
I don't think really any that we didn't already know about. We know they're a really young team and they're going to have games where they get pumped by. It was only 62 points in the end, but we know they're going to have games where they get destroyed. And unfortunately, they came up against a much better side on Saturday and they got pumped.
I think Jack Lukosius is a star, though. I know that they were absolutely pumped, but he was exceptional. And Nick Revold on Fox Footy said that unfortunately they only have one of them and they could have used him. But 9 points in the first half is something that they'll need to amend. The next game was at the same time, and it was the Swans and the Giants as Josh Kelly managed to get one on his boot with a minute left.
Yeah, so Josh Kelly, I think he had a pretty good game as well, 26 disposals and a goal, but he's an absolute star of the competition and one of my favourite players. So to see him stand up when it matters the most and kick the game winner is very good for him and very good for GWS. Another one that I tipped, I thought it wasn't looking so good before Toby Green and Josh Kelly kicked the last 2 goals of the game, but as well, Toby Green, again, another player that's an absolute star and stood up at the end of the game. We know he had 0 goals, 7, and then when the game was on the line and the game mattered most, he kicked 1. So very good for GWS. The unfortunate news, Buddy Franklin, who managed to star in this game, have 14 disposals and 5 goals, is out for the next 4 weeks. So that's unfortunate for Sydney fans and AFL fans alike, but a good win for GWS.
Yeah, emphasise the AFL fans part because he's one of the best footballers to watch when he's on and when he's on fire. But for the Giants, it's interesting to see that they've just picked up since all these injuries have occurred. The win last week, the win this week, and we saw it with the Bombers as well against the Saints. They destroyed them by 75 points and they were missing guys like Caldwell, Shield, Heppel, and they still managed to perform exceptionally. So it's very interesting, and just like that, the Giants are within striking distance of the 8, and they had a real even spread of contributors. Jacob Hopper, Tim Taranto leading the charge, and Shane Mumford, very influential in the ruck, whilst Brent Daniels provided plenty of spark with a goal from 18 disposals. So a great win for the Giants.
Mumford's looking like a prime Mumford right now. We know he's up there in age and he's even retired already, but he's come back and he's playing almost in career best form the last 2 weeks. So it's good to see him playing well as well.
Yeah, for sure. The night game at the G on Foxtel, unfortunately, your Blue Boys went down to the Power by 28 points, and it could have been much worse, but they did kick a few at the end of the game. I know you were there, but for the Blues, they needed some creativity. They only had 9 goals from 57 inside 50s, which is unacceptable to put it. And we've seen teams in the last few weeks have done that. I think Geelong did that last week, 9 inside 50, and they had a rough week. But the Blues, they just need to pick up, and they've got a great list, very talented list. So I'm sure they will.
I think this game was pretty interesting because, as you said, we needed creativity, and I think that's exactly what we've lacked through injuries. Because when I'm thinking of creativity and players that Carlton have that are probably the most creative, I think of Zach Fisher and Jack Martin probably first and second, and both of them are missing. And I think we could have really used them this week. We were in. If you look at the statistics, we were in a lot of them. contested possessions, it was 134, 141 Port Adelaide's way. But uncontested possessions was where we really got killed. 192 for Carlton, 250 for Port Adelaide.
Yeah.
Same as uncontested marks. They had 95. We only had 80. But we had more inside 50s. We had more clearances, which is unlike Carlton. But to dominate, not the ball, but the field positioning, and then not get the use that you'd like. I feel like every time we were kicking inside 50, we weren't even aiming for like Harry Mackay. We were aiming for like Tom Jonas and all of the Port Adelaide defenders who just gave us all a bath. So our shooting accuracy, 9 goals, 14, 39% compared to their 71%. A lot of things didn't add up well, but I think we'll bounce back. I'm pretty sure we've got Brisbane this week, another difficult task considering they look to be back in form. So I don't know. We'll probably fall to 2 and 4, or 2
Although
and 5,
in
but
saying that,
I think we can come back.
you did beat Brisbane at Marvel in 2019 and you're on a similar path to what you are now, but inefficiency has certainly hurt St Kilda and Carlton thus far into the season. But let's not skip past the power. Aliir, 10 intercept marks.
Yeah, he was the other one we kept kicking it down the throat of. The whole game, it looked like we were aiming for him, so it was a little disappointing, but yeah.
Yeah, Lockie Jones in his second game was very good to watch as well. But their midfield, it's extremely strong. It allowed Mitch Georgiades to kick 3 goals, Robbie Gray to kick 3 goals, and Dixon finally returning to some form with 2 goals. Fantasia chipping in, and Ollie Wines 7 clearances. Travis Boak at his best form, and Carl Amon was tremendous. But yeah, the only thing that... Oh, sorry, you go. Yeah.
I have to say, on the Dixon-Wiedering matchup, I think Wiedering probably got the better of his opponent again. We know Dixon kicked 2 goals. Only one of them was on Wiedering. The other one was kicked while Wiedering was off having his concussion test. But I think Wiedering was very good. Doherty was very good. Walsh was very good. But outside of that, I don't think many players had a genuine dip. And I think more effort is something we need to see for sure.
The only thing with the power was they lost the clearances by 4, but I think that if their efficiency kicking towards goal assisted them with maintaining that lead. The next game was up at Brisbane, but between the Lions and the Bombers, extremely wet, slippery conditions. But the Lions managed to prevail by 57 points, and I think Daniel Rich was arguably the best man on the ground.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch this one, but from what I've just looking at the score and the statistics, I think 2 people that Brisbane fans would really like to see up and about, or 3 people even that Brisbane fans would really like to see up and about, and were Danaher, who had 25 touches and 2 goals. Then you recruit when he's firing, Brisbane's going to be so much more dangerous than they already are. McCluggage, who had a very good year last year and started off the season a little bit slow, but had 32 touches and a goal this week. And obviously Lockie Neal, who started off the year very poorly, but had 38 touches and 2 goals. So if those 3 can continue to fire for Brisbane, I think they're going to be very dangerous and back into not only finals contentions, but grand final contention.
Just one man that I think you may have slipped by, Jared Lyons, 36 disposals as well. But as a collective, they're managing to collaborate with each other. And they've become a full force team over the last few weeks, and they can continue at that against your Blues this week, which will be a little dangerous. I know that you're not keen to see that, but it's a Marvel Stadium, so you've got the home advantage. But for the Bombers, Zach Merritt continued his campaign for the Brownlow medal. He had 35 touches, and they conceded the first 5 goals of the game, which obviously won't assist you in winning the game, especially in those conditions, slippery, muggy, raining, and all the in-between. But the next game, I'll let you kick us off, Xavier. It was the Dockers and the Crows, and you managed to tip the Dockers.
Yeah, I did. I thought Mundy, Ryan, Fife, and Michael Walters were probably just about the 4 best players lining up for either team. So I did go with Fremantle, and I think 4 of their main suspects stood up again. Mundy, obviously Ryan, Brayshaw, and Nat Fife were all incredible again. Nat Fife was held a little bit in the tag, but I think he managed to fight through it pretty well, finished up with 24 disposals, but 9 tackles. He was incredible on the defensive end, which is not something you usually associate with Nat Fife, but he was very good.
And Andrew Brayshaw as well. When he avoids the tag, he's a very handy player to have in that midfield. And I think I said this last week. David Mundy is aging like fine wine, but he just continues to get better and better. He does. Nearing 36 years old, and he's playing some brilliant football. Matt Taberner kicked 4 goals as well, and as you said, Nat Fife, Michael Walters, great. For the Crows, though, they weren't too bad. Tex Walker only had 2 goals, I believe, but once he fell off, the pace was slow for the Crows, and they ran over the top, the Dockers did. The
Yeah.
Hawks and the D's, Zave, at the G, it was a good game until the last 16, 17 minutes.
Yeah, I think Melbourne is probably, out of all the teams this year, they're the team I'm most impressed with. I've been pretty high on them the last couple of years, and I thought they've always had the talent, but this year they've seemed to mesh it all together much better. I still think their connection between their midfielders and their forwards was a little bit off, but all of their players played really well. We know Gawn was best on ground, just about the best player of the week. Everything was sticking to his hands. He ended up with 10 marks, most of which were contested. Clayton Oliver had 30 touches again, and Tom McDonald managed to find the football for himself with 22 disposals. And then we've been talking about him the last couple of weeks. Cozzy Pickett, he's been standing up and probably looking like an All-Australian forward right now. But
Yeah.
Melbourne were really, really impressive, in particular in the last quarter when the game was on the line. They just put their foot to the floor and really, really hurt the Hawks.
Credit to Hawthorn, they were competitive, but unfortunately blown away, and I think that's probably the main issue. Alistair Clarkson will have that final quarter. It was 9 goals to 1 or 2. Can't remember off the top of my head, but Chad Wingard and Tom Phillips certainly are better players than what they showed on Sunday. But for the D's, as you said, they're very, very impressive, and I think they're becoming a full threat and challenging any other team that's in their way. And it's not like their wins have been easy. They defeated Geelong, they defeated Hawthorn obviously this week. They've played the Giants, the Saints, and they're certainly looking like a great team, and they're working well with each other, which is probably the most important component. The final game of the week, it was the Cats and the Roos, and I thought the Roos were resilient, and the Cats did what they needed to do.
Yeah, I think the Cats sort of played this game a little bit at 50%.
Yeah.
They only kicked 10 goals, 10 goals, 17 it ended up being, but they didn't look like they were giving it everything, and they still managed to come away with a 30-point victory. So I think that's good for them, and they can ramp it up in the following weeks. And when it comes to the finals time, they'll be hitting their stride. But it's a little bit unfortunate for North Melbourne, and it's a little bit weird that you view a 30-point loss as a little bit of a victory for North Melbourne as well. But I don't think they were horrible. So
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
Something that I've certainly discussed this episode has been the inside 50 conversion rates. And in that third quarter where the game was on the line, North Melbourne kicked 2 goals in 18 entries, whereas the Cats kicked 4 in 11 entries. And that's where the game blew right open. But certainly some positives for the Kangaroos. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if I was a Kangaroos fan. You see on paper North Melbourne Geelong at GMHBA, you're thinking you're in for a rough day at the office. But Cunnington, Jack Siebel were very prolific. And Aidan Bonner, 20 disposals, 12 intercepts, very good. And Jaden Stevenson back to rising star form, possibly.
The number one positive for Geelong as well that they should take out of not just this game, but the post-match interview was Chris Scott said Jeremy Cameron is good to go and will be playing next week. So
Yeah.
it's very good for them to get such a quality player in next week.
Brandon Parfitt, how do you see him at the moment?
Well, he has also been out with injury, and he's one of the people that I've forgotten to name in the last couple of episodes, but he was probably best on ground this week with 34 touches. So
Yeah.
it's a
12
great inclusion
contested.
for him back in the team. Yeah.
Yeah, 12 contested, 8 clearances, 7 tackles, and Sam Menegola just 28 disposals, 2 goals, and Tom Stewart as well, 30 disposals. So they're coming together very well after a shaky start, and now they've got Jeremy Cameron back in the forward line as a target. So if they can perpetuate this form, then once again we see them as a top 4 candidate. And just before we end the episode, I did have something off the top of my head, and it's a player, and he's Brad Hill. How do you see him or view him at the moment?
So we know there was a lot of what do you call it? A lot of talk about him in the media. We know People were saying he only runs one way, which isn't really a surprise. We know that he's more of an offensive player than he is defensive. But he stood up in round 4 and was very good, I think, for the Saints. He had, let me just get his stats, 26 touches, which when you get it in the hands of someone that can use the ball so well 26 times, it's probably going to be a good game. But then this week, I think he was really, really poor. And one of the main reasons St Kilda wasn't so good, I know through 3 quarters, he was just about the worst on ground, super coach and dream team wise. So if he needs to stand up if the Saints want to be better in the future. Otherwise, they're probably not going to be so good, or he might even end up getting dropped.
Dropped a crucial mark, which blew the margin up to 10, and then from then, it was the Marlene Pickett goal. He had a wide open chest mark or mark in front, and he dropped it. Marlene Pickett goals, they're up 10, and all of a sudden they kick a few more. And I think that was probably the turning point of the whole game, to be honest. But the Saints, from a neutral perspective, I would say that they're just inconsistent and they've fallen off and then they pick themselves back up. And as you said, the percentage is something that they'll need to focus on now. They need to take every game seriously and try and get some big margins, because the games they've won, it's been 8 points and 20 points, which isn't going to help the percentage a whole lot when they've had 86-point and 75-point losses.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll quickly move on to the tips for round 6. In the first game, on paper now, it actually looks very solid. Last week or the week before, I think we would have been saying something different, but GWS versus the Western Bulldogs up at Manuka Oval, Xav.
Just a quick statement.
Yeah.
I know I tipped 9 last week, but I'm not a very good tipper and don't expect that again this week. So don't listen to my advice. But for this game, I'm going to go the Bulldogs. This is probably one of the better rivalries in the whole league right now and over the last couple of years. We know they've had the Bontempelli, Toby Green things, Leon Cameron moving clubs, even their captain Ryan Griffin moved to GWS. So one of the better rivalries, but I think I'm going to have to go the Bulldogs. Although it's time for them to lose one game, starting off 5-0, I think they're just a little bit too good for GWS at the moment.
I agree with you, but I do think the Giants are down to make a statement. They beat one unbeaten team last week, and they have the chance to do it again against the Bulldogs. So I do think the Bulldogs will win, but I think it'll be closer than most people expect. Down at GMHBA Stadium, we've got the Cats and the Eagles.
I'm going to go Geelong, and I think Jeremy Cameron might kick a few in his first game back. We know both teams have been riddled with injury so far this year, but the home ground advantage and getting Parfitt and Dangerfield and even Jeremy Cameron in, I think will get Geelong the edge.
I'm going to go with the Eagles. Possibly a risky choice, but I'm 4 tips behind in my competition, and I do need to make some up, and I think this is the week to do so. But yeah, Geelong, they haven't impressed me as much as I would have liked them to this year. But I know Jeremy Cameron's missing, and they've had a few other players missing. But the Eagles, apart from that game against St Kilda, they've been exceptional, and I think that they'll want to take it down to Geelong and surprise everyone watching. So I'm going to go with the Eagles this week. The next game, we've got the Suns and the Swans at Metricon.
I think, although the Swans lost, I think they were a little bit more impressive than Gold Coast last week, and I think they've got a little bit more talent. So I'm probably going to go with the Swans, but I think it will be close.
Another good game, mind you, by the way. I think this will be very entertaining. 2 young sides, but I'm going to go with the Swans as well. The Twilight game, it's your Blues versus the Lions.
I'm going to have to go Brisbane, despite obviously wanting to tip Carlton. I think Brisbane a little bit too good for us in this stage of our development.
I'm going to go with Brisbane, but I do think Carlton have a big chance to win. I don't have the guts to tip them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did win.
Now, I think this game is a game that if Carlton wins, then they might win over some of the media members and some general AFL fans. But because we know Brisbane is a legitimate contender, and this is like a statement win that Carlton could put forth after a bad game last week. If they win this week, they're 3-3. They're probably back in the 8. Or probably not actually at 3-3. But we know they've been good. Or we know they were poor last week. Sorry, but. If they can get this win, I think some people might start looking at us as genuine finals contenders, but still tipping Brisbane.
Yeah, the pair of our teams are in similar positions this week. The next game, possibly the best game of the round, Melbourne versus Richmond.
I'm gonna have to tip Richmond. I know Melbourne's undefeated, and I was just singing their praises just before, but Richmond is a very good team, and they'll continue to be a very good team.
I'm gonna go Melbourne. Once again, different to you, but Melbourne are hard to go past at the moment. And I know the Tigers are coming off an 86-point win, but the D's have just been absolutely amazing. And as I stated before, it's not like the wins have been easy. They've beaten some good teams. So I'm going to go with the Demons. Fremantle, North Melbourne at Optus Stadium.
So I'm going to have to go Fremantle, and not because I think they're overly good or overly talented, but because I think North Melbourne is underly good and underly talented.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you. Possibly the first and only given of the round. I'm going to go with Fremantle as well. Hawthorn versus Adelaide down at Tasmania.
I think this one's a good one.
Mm.
I think Adelaide's probably a better team, but I think I might tip Hawthorn given that it's in Tasmania. But I think it's a close one.
I'm leaning towards Adelaide, but once the teams come out, I think we'll see some changes, and I might have changed my mind. But at the moment, I'll go with the Crows. Anzac Day, Collingwood Essendon, always a blockbuster.
I'm gonna go with Collingwood, and I know that they're riddled with injuries now that they've got Howe and De Goey out, but so are Essendon with Shield. Jordan Ridley went down last week, and we know they've got a couple other ones. So I'm gonna tip Collingwood.
If Ridley was playing this week, I think I would have tipped Essendon, and because he's not, I think I'll have to go with Collingwood. He is just the rock that molds them together. I think their backline together, and possibly the biggest revelation of this year and last year. The final game of the round, and similar to Carlton, the statement game for the Saints if they do win. We're playing Port Adelaide over there at their home ground.
Yeah, I agree. It's a big game for St Kilda because if they win this one, they're obviously, I think they might tie their ledger. They'll be 3-3 as well. So same as Carlton, and then they've got an easier schedule from here on in with Hawthorn next week and Gold Coast the week after. So they might look at being somewhere around the 5-3 mark if they can win this game, but I don't think they will, and I'm going to have to tip Port Adelaide.
Yeah, I'll tip Port Adelaide, but if we do win, as you said, 5-3, and we do have the toughest schedule in the league according to rankings and percentages based off of, I think, last year at the start of the year. They said that we had the toughest schedule, so certainly not easy, but if we can win this week, it'd be lovely. We managed to defeat them last year over there, but we did have Paddy Ryder and Rowan Marshall, so we hope Marshall's playing because, as we saw against the Eagles, I know Marshall didn't have his best game, but I think he just takes the focus off of some other players, which allows some others to blossom. So I'll tip the Power.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think I did hear that Patrick Ryder might be back at the St Kilda training, so he might be good to come into the team in a couple of weeks.
That's music to my ears, Abe. That's the end of the AFL segment, and we'll quickly move to the NBA. And I just want your thoughts on the Lakers at the moment. AD returning very, very soon, and LeBron close by as well.
Yeah, so I think the Lakers are positioned really well, and I don't think they'll be too nervous about their standings unless they fall to the 7 or 8 seed and might have to play in a play-in game. But at the moment, they're 4.5 games, in front of the Mavericks for the 7 seed. So that's looking pretty unlikely, given that Anthony Davis will be back, if not tomorrow, the following game. So I think they've been better than I thought they would be. They've won some big games. They're almost 500 since LeBron went out of the team. But they beat the Jazz. They beat the Nets without both of their stars. And we know both of those teams were injury depleted at the time as well. But to be 35-22, be 5-5 in their last 10 games, and be still heavily in playoff contention and have their stars coming back soon, I think they're very well positioned. And to be honest, I don't think they'll be scared, and I don't think they'll be worried about who they match up against. In the playoffs. So I don't think their seeding really matters, as I said before, unless they fall down into the 7-8 seed. But at the moment, they're going to verse the Nuggets, who are without Jamal Murray. But I think if they do fall, pardon?
Still a great team,
Yeah, but I think if they do fall down to like that 6, 7 seed, it's going to be a little bit of a disadvantage for teams like the Jazz and the Suns who have tried so hard all regular season to have to verse such a good team in the first round, which is exactly why they play hard to avoid. But I think that might be a little bit unlucky, and I think you might see a little bit of tanking in the top end just to try and avoid them. But we'll see.
And I was ecstatic this morning. Did you see Bam Adebayo's buzzer beater to defeat Brooklyn?
I didn't actually get to watch it, but I saw that he did hit one, and I saw that he said he wanted to jump up on
Yeah.
the scorers table like Dwayne Wade. But I think the Heat are pretty well positioned now as well. 6-4 over their last 10. They're finally getting completely healthy, so I think they're a good chance to compete as well.
In saying that, we did have a horrific road trip going down to the Nuggets, Timberwolves, and one other team. So I think we're much better at home. We have the Rockets tomorrow, as of the day this is recorded. So another winnable game, which will take us to 30-28 and position us about the 5th, 6th seed. And from then, hopefully, we can build on some wins and avoid the play-in and get a first-round matchup with someone that we can beat. But just wanted to briefly touch on the NBA. We'll do a follow-up episode soon, I think, reviewing the season thus far and whatnot, reviewing the playoff matchups possible. So, yeah, we'll get that to you soon. But I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, subscribe, and let us know any other ideas or topics you want us to discuss. But hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.